I think Josh brought up a good point. Things are going to be easier for Jonathon Gannon. They're probably going to be a little bit harder for Nick Sirianni when you compare it to last week versus Kansas City. Um, that Kansas City offense is an outlier. I've said it 100 times. I'm going to say it
Mm-hmm.
100 more. It doesn't concern me.
You've got to tune to Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. John McMullen, Jody McDonald hanging with you. Thanks, Jonathon. Never had him on Birds 365 before. First time they've joined our show. And John, thank you for booking him. Seems like a good dude, and I've been reading him. I think he does a pretty damn good job covering the Eagles.
Yeah, he does. And obviously, difficult circumstances. We always talk about replacing legends in sports. Josh is tasked with replacing legends in the sports journalism industry, and Lesbo and obviously Paul Domovich, and who are big parts of this show as well. So he's doing a phenomenal job. I wouldn't want to replace those guys, so I give Josh a ton of credit.
Agreed. Do want to ask you about one aspect that we got a bunch that we still need to cover. That we got in with Josh when he asked him, "Hey, you got to make a pick on the game." Good by you. And he picked the Eagles to lose by 3 points. I've actually been a little bit surprised. This game opened up. I followed this stuff. Game opened up with the Panthers as a 4-point favorite, which means if it's played on a neutral field, the Eagles are 1-3, the Panthers are 3-1. But as you pointed out a couple times already, yeah, the Panthers' wins haven't been against world beaters. I think we're still finding out how good a team the Panthers are. Given the chance last week against the Cowboys on the road, they got gashed and slashed the same way the Eagles did. If you look at the stats from Panthers, Cowboys, and Eagles, Cowboys, eerily similar. The Cowboys did basically the same thing to the Panthers last week that they did to the Eagles the previous week. That's why it is as close to, on a neutral field, a pick'em game. Opened up as a 4-point favorite for Carolina, which would mean Carolina looks like a 1-point better team than the Eagles. The line has actually moved, and almost everywhere it's down to 3. That it opened at 4 and came down to 3. So yeah, it's just 1 point. That's a significant enough move to make note of it from a wagering aspect in the game. And usually there's a reason for it. It can be moved by people betting and coming down more heavily on one side than the other. If that's the case, certainly people are betting the Eagles. It can be information. A guy gets hurt or something is said and there's issues with the team. It has come down. And if you'd asked me on Sunday night when the line opened as 4, if you told me it was going to move a point or two one way or the other, I would have suggested it would have moved up rather than come back down closer to a pick'em game. Why do you think the line has moved in the favor of the Eagles?
I think a lot of people are thinking the same way I'm thinking, and maybe that makes me think I'm thinking wrongly. I overthink these things. How many times can I say think in one segment, Joe?
Think about it, John.
Yeah. I think people look at that schedule and look at the Carolina Panthers and look at the way they played against the Dallas Cowboys. If you're looking at the context of that game, if you look at the final score, everything's hunky dory. No. They got blown out of that game. They got really gashed in the right. We talked about the Eagles getting gashed. I think the Cowboys had 240 or so running the football against the Carolina Panthers. So I think people are trying to put that into context and saying this team really hasn't beaten anybody. And when they did play the first good team, projected good team at least in Dallas, they got handily beaten. And then you look at the other side, and I think Josh brought up a good point. Things are going to be easier for Jonathon Gannon. They're probably going to be a little bit harder for Nick Sirianni when you compare it to last week versus Kansas City. That Kansas City offense is an outlier. I've said it 100 times. I'm going to say it 100 more. It doesn't concern me. So you're going to go back to more of a normal approach on the defensive side of the ball. So I think it all comes offensively, and I think people are showing some signs of showing some optimism in the Eagles' offense. Numbers wise, it doesn't look bad at all. The Eagles' offense, bottom line standpoint. I forget. I know it's very. Let me grab the numbers right here, Jody. So Eagles' offense, and we're now, 4 games. That's not a great sample size, but it's something. Total ranked eighth, ninth in rushing offense, which I think surprises people. Ninth in passing offense, where you have an issue that hasn't turned into the efficacy you need. They're 17th in points per game, which is the most important part of it all. The one issue has been fourth down offense, which we talked a little about with Ryan Paganetti yesterday. That's the one outlier. They're at the bottom of the league there, 28th. Everything else is pretty good, but they're doing it unconventionally because the quarterback is the running game. So everyone talks, you got to run the football, you got to run the football, you got to run the football. They're a top 10 rushing offense, but it's the quarterback doing it. It's the quarterback. So are you okay with that? I mean, if they can turn this into points, obviously, and finish drives, and remember last week, Jody, they scored 3 times and that were called back. So if you can eliminate those in 2 cases, really all 3 cases, but 2 were in the red zone, pretty silly mistakes. All of a sudden, this offense doesn't look that bad.
That's you hit the nail on the head right there at the end. Are they moving the ball enough? Yes. Are they running the ball enough? Yes. If you count Jalen Hurts runs as runs, which they are, you go, it's not really a run. Okay, then you need to be more specific in your critique. The running backs could be used more successfully. I certainly believe that. But if you're just talking about the Eagles running the football, sure, of course, Jalen Hurts runs counts. Touchdowns. Need touchdowns. You can't take touchdowns off the board. When you get it into the red zone, you need to get 7, not 3.
Especially
plain
against
and
Kansas
simple.
City.
And especially against Kansas City last week. Now, this week, I don't expect the Panthers. I predicted here on Birds 365 that the Chiefs would hang a 40 burger on the Eagles, and they did. I'm not predicting a 40 burger for Carolina this week, so it's not as pressing this week as it was last week. And yes, some will be determined by the game. If the Panthers come out and take the opening kickoff and march it down the field and score, and then the Eagles have a turnover and the Panthers get a short field and they score and it's 14-0 and there's still time left on the clock in the first quarter, well, that changes the dynamic of the game. But I'm not going to predict that or project that. They need to run the football with their running back. Jalen's going to make good plays with his leg. That's never going to disappear. But they need to get in the end zone. They can't just settle for field goals. If it's a field goal game, because sometimes you get in a game where, all right, the other team kick a field goal. You got to match it. You got to go down. You get 4th and 9. We're in field goal range. What are we going to do? Go for it? No, we got to take the field goal and level it off from what we just did. They need to be a little bit more efficient when they get into the red zone. Nobody would argue that. I'm not sure if the game plays that way this week, though.
Well, I think there's more margin for error. I think there's more way to play conservatively against Carolina. I think if it is 4th and 3, I think you can take a field goal and feel comfortable about it. Whereas last week, I think you should have pressed the issue and should have understood you need to score touchdowns. But the sloppiness is the issue, right? I mean, the Eagles, if you turn those 3, put those 3 touchdowns on the board, Devontae Smith was talking about, look, he's got to be sharper at the top of his routes, getting off the line of scrimmage. And then he's not in a situation where he's getting pushed off the field. So he realizes it, talked a lot about the illegal downfield stuff. Eagles got to be more aware, as Josh said, about they're calling it. It's a point of emphasis. So it's not college. They're not going to let you leak down the field. You got to be very, very disciplined. And then the offensive pass interference. Again, that's just that to me is probably the toughest teaching point, because I say, as long as you're subtle about it, they're not going to call a rub route, what the offense calls a rub route, what the defense calls a pick route. They're not going to call it if you're subtle. But how do you teach subtlety? I don't know. It depends on who the opposite official is looking at it. It's a subjective call, but I can say, pretty good place to start, Jody. Don't extend your arms, and you might get away with that. But moving the football, they've been pretty effective. But you also have to be realistic. And again, I say last week against Kansas City, the defense was up against it, obviously. The offense wasn't. That's not a good defense the Chiefs have. It's certainly right now. There's hope they get better from their perspective as the season goes on. This week, it's more of a normal game, I would say. Carolina is like a normal NFL team. They have plenty of good players. They can hurt you on both sides of the football, but you don't have the splash. Oh my God! Here comes the Kansas City Chiefs offense into play.
I'm surprised we didn't touch on this. I'm trying to remember as best we can, and I'm 99.9% sure we didn't touch on this. That penalty on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside against the Chiefs on Sunday, it has been talked about in a lot of different areas, post-game shows, and certainly on the radio and the like. That was a no-brainer as far as I was concerned.
I agree.
I know you think the game's well over legislated.
It is.
And you're right. But that was like pass blocking one-on-one. You can't do it. You're down the field. You can't extend an arm like that. I thought it was a blatant, easy call, and people questioning it, and was it really?
Nick Sirianni and Jason Kelsey lost their minds. I'm like, what are you complaining about? I mean, they're 90% of the time they're going to call that. If they don't call it, you're getting off lucky. That's what they look for in those pick routes is if the arms are extended and you're pushing off, they're going to call it. If you just sort of act like you're running a route, run into the guy, act a little surprised.
Right. You got to make it look like he's running into you, not you're running into him.
Yeah.
You extend the arm. There's no question who ran into who. You basically grabbed a hold of the guy. That was a blatant foul as far as I was concerned, and I didn't understand all the hubbub. You're right, starting with guys on the Eagles and media members thereafter.
No, I'm the same way. In the press box, I saw it. They're going to throw that flag every time. I didn't know what people were complaining about either. I mean, I had no issue with that flag, and I think anybody who did is playing homer if they're in the media. I don't know about people in the media, but obviously Nick Sirianni, Jason Kelsey are upset, but I would have been more upset at the illegal downfield stuff because they're really ticky-tack on that. And and if you watch other games, there's no consistency. And but that's really difficult to officiate. And the Eagles, to their credit, have said that. Nick Sirianni has said that. Shane Steichen has said that. It's really difficult to officiate, and it's really inconsistent. And you almost have to accept the fact that if you're going to run a lot of RPOs occasionally, you're going to get bit by that.
All right, Johnny Mac. I think we touched on this one. I don't remember. Quote by the defense coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, Jonathon Gannon, this week when asked a question about why they don't play much dime defense. I don't think we have to explain to people what dime defense is. It's an extra defense.
Evidently, we have to explain to some people. I got some Twitter people, but
okay.
I think most people.
Then a quick tutorial. Base sets in the NFL forever, not in the 2020, but take it back to the previous millennium. And you have two cornerbacks, two safeties, 3 linebackers, 4 defensive linemen. And the game has drastically changed because that's much more passing involved. So the Eagles' base is basically with 3 cornerbacks on the field and 2 safeties. That's a nickel because you're adding an extra defensive back to the mix. If you add another defensive back to the mix and take another linebacker off the field, then it becomes a dime package. The defense coordinator was asked about why aren't you playing dime? Why don't you play dime? Why haven't you played dime? And his response was, well, we're just not a dime team right now.
I'm glad you put right now on there, Jody, because a lot of people miss the right now.
Correct. And that's part of it and needs to be acknowledged. But there's no team in the National Football League, I would suggest, that can't go to dime at some point. When your opposition has the weapons outside at wide receiver that the Kansas City Chiefs do, I'm sorry, you've got to be able to play dime. You can't throw up your hands and say, well, we're not going to do it because we're just not a dime team right now. Not acceptable. Sorry, Jonathan. That's
I think it wasn't a good answer. From talking to JG, in the past and behind the scenes and things. He's playing a lot of zone. So I think what he was trying to get across is, we're playing this anyway. And if you're playing a lot of 2 deep cover 2, the last thing you want, you've seen the issues with run support to begin with. That's just why I'm a little surprised so many people are fired up about this. Other than Tyreek Hill getting matched up with Eric Wilson in the red zone. I get that. That shouldn't happen. That's more of a communication issue where you probably got to have Slay covering them, sort of a boxing one, if you want to use a basketball term. That's unacceptable. But I would say you're already struggling. You're playing this cover 2 to limit the big plays from Kansas City, which actually was kind of successful. They made him go on long drives till the very end. And you're getting gashed in the running game. Now, so you want to take another linebacker off the field and put Zach McPherson on the field? I think that's what he's trying to say.
Was that a rhetorical question?
Well,
or was it one that you would like me to answer?
Well, if you're going to
answer is yes. Yes. I have no problems taking any of those Eagle linebackers off the field right now.
I get what you're saying. The Eagles linebackers are not very good. I've said that 100 times. But if you think the run support is going to improve by taking Eric Wilson off the field, who I don't think is very good, and putting Zach McPherson on the field, it ain't happening. I mean, it's only to get even worse from that limited perspective of stopping the run. Now, if you want to argue Sean Bradley should be on the field or TJ Edwards or try somebody else of the linebackers they do have, Davion Taylor.
That's the guy I'm waiting for you to get to because this is
I'll listen to that. That makes
season.
More sense to me.
When do we get to learn about Davion Taylor?
That makes more sense to me. But getting back to the dime prospect, if you're going to play zone, who cares? Who cares if it's, if you're going to play man, okay, yeah, give me a corner on the field. But if you're going to play zone, why are you going to get worse in the run support than you already are?
All right, so then here's the question for you. John McMullen's football expertise. Are the Eagles playing too much zone right now? You've got a guy in Darius Slay.
Not against Kansas City. I would say overall, yes. I mean, I would tell you Tampa Bay played too much zone when they made the Tampa 2 famous, which was actually, Tony Dungy actually created in Minnesota when I was there. I would tell you they paid. I hated that defense. But, when you have Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp and John Lynch, Hall of Famers at every level, okay, it can work.
Yeah.
The real key to the Tampa 2 is Derek Brooks, is to have that linebacker who can cover almost like a defensive back, and can also be great in run support. And guess what, Jody? That ain't easy to find.
Right.
That
And for damn sure the Eagles don't have a Derek Brooks right now.
No. So I look at Jonathon Gannon's history, though, and you go back to Minnesota, and you had Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr, who are two good linebackers. You go back to Indianapolis, he had Darius Leonard. Closer, Eagles don't have that player right now. But I mean, when they're struggling against the run so much, this is what I find so perplexing. Other than the answer, I get why I don't think it was a good answer. You got to be more savvy in answering that. But I have no idea why people are saying put another defensive back on the field when you can't stop the running game of anybody. And like I said, with Dallas, okay, they run the ball. They just ran the ball down the throat of Carolina as well. Kansas City, as I've said, they don't even want to run the ball. And they're running the ball with ease. That's a bigger concern. So the last thing I want is another defensive back on the field. Maybe I want 5 defensive linemen on the field. Maybe think out of the box that way versus putting a dime defense on the field.
I know you and I talked about this earlier this week, and the want of the Philadelphia fans. We kind of talked about it last night when I was doing the show with Krause out at Screwballs. Everybody loves the blitz. I know you were a defender of the previous defensive coordinator here who had success. Check the numbers. His defense was pretty damn good. It's time here in Philadelphia, but it wasn't the kind of defense that Philadelphia fans like. They like blitzing. They like sending extra guys. They like to try and kill the quarterback. Attempted murder on a QB is always going to get a Philadelphia cheer. Jonathon Gannon hadn't done that since he got here. He's like Schwartz in that way. The blitz has been nominal. Minimal would probably be the better way to describe it.
Even less so than Jim Schwartz.
Which people thought, who can blitz less than Jim Schwartz? Answer, Jonathon Gannon. Because they've been gashed as badly as they have the last 2 weeks. Jonathon, go out there on the edge. Maybe he'll be a little bit more aggressive. Bring a blitz from somewhere. And I said this last night on the show. I know people want it, and I would want it too. But realistically, who's that guy?
No,
if he's going to blitz someone, you need to decide who's that going to be. I know they brought, I think, only one corner blitz all year so far, or only got home with one corner blitz. Avante Maddox, I think, has a half a sack, and he's the only guy in the team that does. If I tell you, John McMullen, he's going to be more aggressive, he's going to blitz more, who is that guy most likely to be?
They don't have. See,
this is where really don't have a candidate for it.
It would have to be the Sam linebacker, would have to be Jannard Avery, would have to be Patrick Johnson, maybe a slot blitz, as you mentioned, from Avante Maddox, but not consistent. Remember, at least Jim Schwartz had Malcolm Jenkins. Yeah. They don't have that type of player on the back seven. So, yeah, Philadelphia, by the way, Philadelphia's got to get out of the Buddy Ryan mode. I mean,
not happening. Not in your lifetime, not in my lifetime.
I mean, yeah. And if you do blitz, you're probably, with this team, you're probably getting a flag anyway for roughing the quarterback. So just play, stay in your lane and play your zone and try to figure out run support.
Play it a little bit better than they have the last 2 weeks. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Quickie timeout. I see Mike Garafolo's smiling face from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Philly boy Mike Garafolo joins us next here on Birds 360.